Well, hello everyone, and welcome to Friday Devotions. My name is Tyler, and I am the worship minister at DeWitt Christian Church. If this is your first time viewing one of these videos and you enjoy it, please be sure to go down below and hit the subscribe button as well as the notification button so you can be notified whenever we upload any videos like this. And if you don't know already, we actually upload our recorded services every Sunday morning at 10:15 Eastern Standard Time in the morning. And if you don't have a church that you're watching services from, or you don't have a church that you regularly attend, go ahead and check those out, because those are just made public for anybody to view, and we would love it if we could bless your lives in that way. Also, our links to our social media as well as our website are in the description down below, so please be sure to check those out if you need anything from those places. So for today's devotional, I want to start off with telling a little bit about my childhood. So when I was about probably 8 or 10 years old, I was in Boy Scouts for right about a year. It was something that my dad did as a kid, and he really enjoyed it. So he enrolled myself and as well as my siblings into Boy Scouts, and we really loved it. I enjoyed it a lot. I think probably my favorite part was actually the monthly camping trips that we'd do. They'd usually be at the end of the month, and it was one of those things I really enjoyed. And I think my favorite one was this camping trip where we had to build our own shelters. We didn't have a tent or anything like that. We brought sleeping bags and pillows, but we had to build our own shelter out of just some tarps and some rope. And I really enjoyed it because it was this opportunity to apply all of these things that we had been learning throughout the past months on how to tie different knots, or how to make our own shelters, how to even start our own fires safely, all these different things you learn in Boy Scouts. It was a way for us to just apply it, and it was a lot of fun, and it was very rewarding to go through and use all the skills that we had been learning. I think what's really cool is that it was living out one of the mottos of the Boy Scouts, which is always be prepared. They had been preparing us for weeks and months in advance for this camping trip where we would have to kind of fend for ourselves and do our own thing by teaching us different skills that were needed and useful for this kind of situation. And so that was really cool, and I really appreciated that they did that. And it was probably my favorite of all my camping trips while I was with the Boy Scouts. And very similarly, Jesus actually spends a good portion of his ministry on earth preparing his 12 disciples for the time when he is no longer going to be here on this earth, and that they're going to be in charge and responsible for spreading the gospel, for being kind of the first elders of the Jerusalem church, and how they're going to guide and lead the church after Jesus has left. And so if you look at the passages that are surrounding Matthew 9, which is where we're going to look in just a little bit, you see that Jesus is spending all of this time going from cities to different towns and villages, and he's ministering to people, and he has this ministry of healing and teaching. There are a lot of people that are curious about him, so a lot of people come and see him, and word of mouth about the crazy different things that he does spreads throughout the people. And so he has a lot of people that gather to him and that want to see what he is all about. And so this is where we catch up with Jesus. And so at the end of chapter 9 of Matthew, we're going to take a look at what happens. This is what it says. You can read along on your screens with me. Jesus went through all the towns and villages, teaching in their synagogues, proclaiming the good news of the kingdom, and healing every disease and sickness. When he saw the crowds, he had compassion on them, because they were harassed and helpless, like sheep without a shepherd. Then he said to his disciples, "The harvest is plentiful, but the workers are few. Ask the Lord of the harvest, therefore, to send out workers into his harvest field." So picture this with me. Jesus has gone from village to village, just traveling around. He preaches and teaches, and usually there are crowds following him everywhere. And this is kind of a 24/7 job. So as you can imagine, Jesus and the disciples, after a while, get pretty exhausted, because this is what they do all the time. They don't really get any breaks. Probably the closest thing to a break they get is the Sabbath on Saturdays. And even then, it says that Jesus is going and teaching in the synagogues, and people would gather on the Sabbath in the synagogues, so you can kind of see where that's going. So their day off, is it really a day off? You know, Jesus is still teaching and doing things. And so, as you can imagine, they get exhausted. They're basically on duty 24/7, and Jesus never really stops or takes time off from his ministry, but just keeps going. So as you can imagine, they get very tired and exhausted, and I'm sure there's many times where the disciples would grumble and complain. But Jesus, being Jesus, when he sees these crowds, in Matthew it says that he has compassion for them, and he wants to actually go and teach them, because he sees them and they're like, they are helpless sheep and they don't have a shepherd. They're harassed, they're helpless. And so Jesus, being the good shepherd, as he refers to himself, wants to go and he wants to help these people. It wouldn't surprise me on this particular occasion if Jesus actually says what he says at the end of this chapter in response to grumbling and complaining from the disciples. I'll read it again. He says, "The harvest is plentiful, but the workers are few. Ask the Lord of the harvest, therefore, to send out workers into his harvest field." So I don't know about a lot of you right now, but I've been trying my best to stay out of social media. A lot of people right now, because of quarantine and the virus and the way it is affecting everything in our world around us, a lot of people are complaining, a lot of people are irritable. And I don't know if many of you have been driving lately. It's not very unusual for me to see people going a considerable speed over the speed limit. And I just think right now people are very irritable and they're grumbling and complaining about the state of things. But I don't want to understate how serious the current global pandemic is right now, because it is very serious. Many people have died from this disease, and it's something that we have to take very seriously. There are a lot of people that have loved ones that have died. There are a lot of people who are being affected financially because of it, and there are a lot of people afraid of what could happen if someone they know catches it, or if somebody in their household catches this disease. So I don't want to underplay how big of a deal this is, but it's taking its toll on all of us, and none of us are immune to the negative effects of the global pandemic. If Jesus was here today and he heard all of the grumbling and complaining many of us are doing right now, I think his response would be very similar to that he had with the disciples. Because as Christians, I think that this global pandemic has offered a unique opportunity for us that we may not get again in our lifetimes. One of the things that this virus is doing, it is turning people's minds towards things and causing them to ask questions that they wouldn't normally ask. Things such as what happens after death, what point is there to going on living in this world with everything going so poorly, what is going to happen next. It causes them to ask a lot of these sort of existential questions about how and why and things about the universe that you don't often find very good answers for outside of the Bible. And as Christians, I believe that it is part of our duty to help provide those answers, because right now this virus is opening up the hearts and the minds of people to these things that they may not normally listen to. Because when people experience tragedy, when they experience really difficult times, they have to turn to something. And we all know that the physical material world doesn't satisfy our desire for reason and meaning outside of maybe for an hour or two here and there, and it still leaves us with more questions than it answers. And many times I think it leaves us with more questions at the end than when it began. And so as Christians, I think this is a unique opportunity that we have to start speaking into those situations that people are going through, and to start reaching out to them and sharing with them the hope and the love of Christ. Because here's the thing, we don't put our hope in the material world, we put our hope in Jesus Christ, and we have this hope that goes beyond tomorrow, the next year, the next 10 years. It goes on into eternity and a life after death with Jesus in his kingdom. And so I think that this is an opportunity for us to be preparing for the harvest that I think is going to happen. Now, I don't want to downplay, again, the seriousness of these events, but I think and I believe that God can still use awful events in such a way that are beneficial to his kingdom in the long run. And so my challenge to all of you in these next few weeks is to be thinking about this idea of what are some ways that I can be working this harvest, because the truth is the workers are very few. And so the thing is, we should be looking for opportunities to spread the hope and love of Jesus Christ. And for some of you, this is a unique opportunity for you to grow in your spiritual faith. A lot of us don't have as much going on in our day-to-day lives as we did, say, 3 or 4 months ago. And so now this is a unique opportunity to spend more time reading the Bible, spend more time praying, maybe spend some time reading spiritual books that help in your spiritual growth so that you can be this person of hope and love that just radiates these things to people around you when you come into contact with them. Now, you may have to be a little more creative about how you share these things, because we should be abiding by the social distancing guidelines right now, and we should be listening to what the experts are saying. And so you might have to be a little more creative with how you do some of these things. But like they say, where there's a will, there's a way. And if you really want to be growing the kingdom, if you really want to be spreading hope and love to people that are really unsure of what their tomorrow is going to be like, this is a perfect opportunity. And so my challenge again to you is to be thinking about these things, to prepare yourself. Like the Boy Scouts, always be prepared. This is a time where you can be preparing yourself to do those things, because it is a very unique time and it is a unique opportunity that we as Christians have. Well, thank you so much for stopping by and just checking out this video. Again, like I mentioned at the very beginning of the video, if you are new to this channel and you like what you have seen here, please go down below, hit that subscribe button, maybe leave a comment of something you like that gives me some feedback for all of you to hopefully make these better as we go along. But also in the description, check out the link to our church's website, because on there we have some forms that if you are struggling, if the global pandemic has really affected your family or someone you know and love, we have some forms that you can fill out that will hopefully allow us to help you out. We already have people in our church that have signed up to look to help people. Now, of course, you'll have to be in the Lansing, Michigan and DeWitt, Michigan area so that you're within a reasonable distance for us to help you out. But we do have people that are looking to help others out if they are in need. So if you find yourself in that situation, please fill out one of those forms below in our website. Thank you again so much for checking this out, and I hope that the Lord is keeping you safe and blessing you, and I look forward to seeing all of you again in the next video.